Hey guys, welcome back to Creators Campfire. I'm Bhav.
And I'm Liz.
And this is episode 2 of our little co-hosting thing. We were supposed to record every single week and upload within 24 hours. That did not happen. We recorded our first episode and it was edited and uploaded, and then it was left with me to create a thumbnail. And, well, surprise, surprise, I did not create said thumbnails. So that episode has not gone up. And then we didn't record last week because life, but we're back. Although I was talking to Tintin and I mentioned that I hadn't created the thumbnail and put the episode out. And he was like, that's okay, because I think we should have you should always have a backlog of episodes. And I was like, okay, cool. So I gave myself I'll get it out next week, and then I still haven't done it. But in theory, we could record 3 of these and then release them.
Exactly. And I think this is part of the thing with creators, isn't it? It's like when to launch, when, I guess, perfectionism versus just doing it and all of those kind of things. So I think this is probably a very common story about amongst people. And I guess you and I probably have slightly different tolerances. I'm like an 80% done and get it out. You're a bit of a perfectionist. So it's kind of a bit of a difference.
Yeah, I do find actually, in my head it needs to, actually, I do get to that point of I'm done with this. It just needs to go. My issue is starting.
Yeah.
It's just because I make it into such a big deal. It's like that thumbnail probably would have taken 10 minutes of my time. But in my head, it was I need to do all of these things. But I woke up this morning and I was like, I can't remember what I was thinking, but I had this, we took a break in the middle of the episode that we recorded. Did I edit that break out? I was like, I don't think I did. I was like, thank God I didn't create a thumbnail, because I think there's a whole 5-minute gap that I actually need to go and edit out. So, things like this happen, and I'm like, oh, thank God for procrastination.
Exactly. There was a reason why we never started this.
Exactly. So that's where we are. So if you have listened to episode 1 and you were like, guys, you absolutely did not get it up within 24 hours, that is
you
why.
Were right. Yeah.
Yeah. You knew us better than we knew ourselves. I mean, we were clearly kidding ourselves. But yeah, I think maybe we'll go for 3 episodes and then release them. And we have a buffer for the weeks that we can't do or whatever. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I think it's that halfway house of I need to be perfect and have all these episodes in the backlog, versus actually we just need to figure out what we're doing, which we're still doing. And we have something to cover us. So that will happen at some point. So you are probably not listening to this within 24 hours of us recording, but that's okay. And we're okay with this. Cool. All right. So as we fiddle with the format and stuff of this, I thought it'd be cool to do wins and struggles from the week, because it's a good little weekly reflection. I've just realized I've knocked the camera. Apologies, people, for anybody watching. So yeah, I have some wins, and actually that's raised some challenges or struggles for me that I hope you can help with, please.
Absolutely. Let's dive in. I can't wait to hear.
Nice. Okay, so I asked Ali a couple of weeks ago the question, if I only had, backstory, if for anybody who is just jumping into this and wondering what the hell or who we are, we'll get a canned intro at some point. When I refer to Ali, I'm referring to Ali Abdaal, who is the person I work for, and I am his, what we're currently calling an EA, so an executive assistant, but we're working on that terminology. So I asked Ali the question, if I only had 2 hours in a day to work, what would you want me to focus my time on? Because I was like, there's obviously a bunch of stuff I'm doing that maybe doesn't need doing, or you're like, why are you wasting time on that? And the answer was kind of surprising. So he said, the first let me get this in the right order. The first 10 minutes of the day, and give or take 5 minutes on each of these, the first 10 minutes of the day should be just making sure the calendar is absolutely fine and there's details in everything that is on my calendar for today, and I know where I'm supposed to be for the day. I was like, cool, that makes a ton of sense. The next 10 minutes should be actually, I lie. The next 10 minutes should be vlog planning. Now, I want to come back to vlog planning in a second, so just keep that as a placeholder for now, guys. It should be vlog planning for the day. Then the next 10 minutes should be checking all messages and emails. It's probably more 20 minutes, this one. But just checking all messages and emails to see if there are any fires or anything urgent or anything that impacts the day, basically. So not necessarily actually going through them, but scanning them to see, this is important, flag this. And I was like, okay, cool. That kind of makes sense. So that's, I don't know, 40 to 50 minutes of the day. So let's call that the first hour-ish. I think there was one more thing, but I'm probably forgetting it. And then the next hour is a power hour. So the idea of let's focus on something important but not urgent, the stuff that always kind of gets left behind, I guess, right? So I think we had this back and forth, and like, okay, this is almost like project time. So at the moment, I think we toyed with two ideas. We were like, okay, Bhav, like you could start learning like the AI stuff, and you're also pretty good at like all the no-code automation stuff, so you could kind of expand that knowledge and see where it could take us. Alternatively, I wanted to get this PA course out for like the last 2-3 years. Kind of now sits within your area. Let's get that out. So we decided that the PA course was the more important one, at least for the short term.
Okay.
Also the one driving the revenue, so that makes a ton of sense. So yeah, the idea is that I spend the next hour a day, like effectively building that up, like however we look at it. I was like, okay, that's cool. That makes a ton of sense. And Ali was like, okay, so effectively you won the day if you do all of those things, because we're on top of like whatever we're on top of, and you're actually ticking off the important but not urgent stuff, because the urgent stuff will always get done. Whether that I end up doing it or Ali ends up doing it, like it will happen because it's urgent. I was like, cool, that makes a lot of sense. So my point is, the win for the week is I actually did that. And I was surprised I did that. It might have been easier because Ali wasn't here this week and I wasn't in the office, but box ticked. So I was like, sick. It also meant, so this week, if anybody is interested, I read $100 Million Offers Again by Alex Hormozy, because the whole point of, I guess, so the PA course, we're creating a course. The idea is that you have this Grand Slam offer and everything comes off the back of the offer. And therefore, if you don't know what the offer is, how can you create anything on the back of it? So we're not creating a course and then figuring stuff out. We're kind of going, okay, what is it that people need? And therefore, like, blitz that book again. For anyone that remotely sells anything, fantastic book. Really good. Made a ton of notes. Side point, actually, I ended up just making a ton of notes in like this week and reading the book, and didn't actually make much progress on doing the exercises. Now I've penciled that in for next week, but yeah, I don't know. There's obviously this balance, because I will just be like, oh, I need to get through all the material, and there's like a halfway house between doing it and getting through it. But I guess a week isn't too long of a time to get stuck into that.
No, not at all. So I'd say, like, there's lots of pins we stuck in conversations there, didn't we? So, I mean, firstly, for anyone who's, like, listening, doing that exercise of having a conversation with your boss is such a good thing in terms of, like, what actually are the real needle-moving things in my job. Because I think quite often we kind of add stuff on and don't ever really think about, like, what are the game-changing things? And actually, what does my boss actually care about? So whether or not you're creative or like corporate, like that's such a good exercise to go through, I think. And you were probably quite surprised by some of the things that were like actually, and I have this conversation with loads of people, which is like, I don't really know what my boss wants, or I don't know how like I show I'm doing a good job, or if you're in like that creative industry, I don't really know like what's the most impactful thing for me to like focus on. And I think just doing that exercise is so useful, because it really just narrows down like all the extraneous stuff that we're doing. So I think that's an awesome thing that you did, and you probably learned loads. So was there anything that surprised you about that conversation that you had with him?
I think more just like like having that power hour first thing in the morning, which I'll come on to in a second. I have a point around that. But yeah, I was surprised. It was like, actually, yeah, if we tick those boxes, we've kind of won. I was like, oh, okay, cool. That is interesting, because yeah, you're right. You can, but like then reflecting back, it makes a ton of sense, because you're like, he's right. The urgent stuff will get done, right?
Yeah,
because if something comes up, you will just drop everything and do it. So I think it was just, more than anything, it was just good to get that clarity of like, this is the expectation. And also, if I am spending an hour a day on effectively leveling up, which is a thing we kind of talk about and is one of our values in the company, of taking time out of the work day to like build on own knowledge, because effectively it helps the company anyways, but it also helps us skill up. That's okay. and we had been told this like repeatedly, but still to kind of go, no, prioritize it is like, oh, that's actually okay, fair. Like, I know you've been saying it, but now you're saying it.
Yeah, and I think I often talk to people, and especially women, if I'm being honest, and it's almost like they need permission to do that. Like, it's like, I often like be like, I give you permission to focus on the most important thing, because I think a lot of people, we get distracted by the busy, which is fair when you have like a 20-point to-do list, it's kind of a bit overwhelming, isn't it? And actually just putting that thing at the top and being like, no, that's the thing I need to do today, and everything else will either get done or actually drop off the to-do list. Because quite often I find with the urgent stuff, either you'll, as you say, you'll do it and you'll jump on it, or actually someone else just picks it up, or actually it turns out it wasn't urgent in the first place. It's like that's someone else's urgency being imposed upon you. So I think it's interesting if you just like, I just give you permission. And I notice this a lot. So for those of you who don't know, like my background's really in like management consulting and stuff, and I am really interested in like gender dynamics at work. And men are really good at this. Men are really good at single tasking and also focusing on the thing that's going to impress those around them or those above them. Women feel like we need to do everything, and it's only when we do everything that we feel like we're impressing. And it's a very interesting kind of dynamic, not strictly true in all cases, but as a generalisation. So I think with women, it's often that conversation of actually, what are the game-changing things for you? And, you know, what are the other tasks that you've picked up that actually either people don't value as much? So we see this a lot in like things like organising social events or tidying up after a meeting and all those sorts of things. Women will naturally step into those roles, right? Yes. No man has on his to-do list like order birthday cake because it's so-and-so's birthday. Like we pick up all that stuff, right? Yeah. And then we're like, how do they get to always work on the big projects? And it's like, well, because they're not really worried about that kind of stuff, are they? So I think that's a massive thing. The other thing you said about was obviously, and I haven't read that book, so I'm going to definitely write that down. We'll link it in the description, won't we, for anyone else who wants to check it out. Because I wasn't really aware of him, and then, you know, it was like all of a sudden he's all over your algorithm and all you're kind of seeing is him. But I hate doing exercises in those types of books. I find it really difficult.
I'm so glad you said that.
So I'd say, rather than feeling like you have to do all of those exercises, I'd go back over my notes and be like, right, what are the key lessons that I took from this and how can I implement that for me? Rather than feeling like you have to follow every exercise and do it all perfectly, which is probably what you're thinking. And then it becomes a bigger task in your head in terms of like, oh, well, I haven't got time to think about that, so I'm not going to do it. And then the learning sort of drifts away. So I just be like, you don't have, just because it's there, you don't have to do it. Like, you can just be like, okay, what were the 3 key lessons for me? And maybe just like revisit that every kind of month or so and be like, right, is there anything else I can pull in? Rather than feeling like you have to complete all of the exercises. I hate those in themselves. I mean, I understand why they're there, but like, I'm like, oh, I hate those things. Yeah,
I agree. Unfortunately, in this case, in order to build the offer, I need to follow the step by step. But you're right, I don't have to have it perfect, right? I can just make a list and we can like build on that list. Yeah. Side note, sorry team, there'll be a lot of side notes. All over the place.
A lot of pins, a lot of side notes.
Because I do want to come back to the permission thing. Yeah. Well, yes. I do want to come back to the permission point. But like for anybody who is as nerdy as me and loves like note taking and anything revolving stationery, I decided to make what I for those who are watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see this, a media log in my little moleskin. I think that's up. Nice. There we go. Because I had the book and I was like, I feel like I need to use it. But anyway, the point is I normally read books and don't take any notes. And I do that exactly like you said. I either take all the notes in the world or I take nothing. So it's like, either I just like whatever. So I'm trying to be okay with just listening to something and either having no notes from it or a couple of notes, because a couple of notes are still better than no notes because it's effectively a pin, right? So what I'm trying to do, and it's only been a week, but I've got back into reading, FYI. I'll come back to Ratunia in a second. Just after everything little, like even if it's the end of the day, it doesn't need to be there and then, is I'll just write a sentence or two or a line or a word about something that I've read. And I've actually found it, like, again, 4 days, guys, but still, I've actually found it really useful because when I go back to the book, I just have a quick glance at like my one line from the day before, and this is for fiction and non-fiction. I'm like, oh yeah, like I totally remember. And it's almost that like the forgetting curve, right? Yeah. So it's like curbing the forgetting curve or like halting it. And I found it really interesting. And I just love keeping a log of what I've read. And it sometimes so stupid, but sometimes that stops me from reading. We'll see how long that one lasts. Anyway.
I like the idea of kind of distilling it down to being like one thing. Like, I think as well, sometimes when we're reading these types of books, we feel like everything is important, and it is, but like it's actually what's the most impactful thing to me. And I think when you reread it 6 months or 12 months, there'll be something else. And I think a lot of it is just about like what's most relevant. You know, like if you bought a red car, all you see is red cars. It's that kind of same concept in terms of like the stuff that's right for you right now is the stuff that will stand out. And there'll be lots of other good stuff in those books, but actually you don't need to take it all in right now.
Yes. So true. And with $100 million offers, because I knew it was going to be one of those books where actually there was so much practical stuff in there, I knew that having the physical book would have made it like so much better.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to see it, obviously stolen from work. I've defaced this. Sorry.
Oh, I like it's like Cabrix colours. This is a good colour for it, right?
I'm so glad this is paperback, though. I absolutely hate the hardbacks.
It's a big book, though, right?
But it's not too bad. It's volume 1. He's got volume 2 coming out tomorrow. No, today, which is $100 million leads. This guy. Nice. Anyway, sorry. My point was highlighter and pen, and I've been okay with defacing books recently. And it just
because you're not a library, right? So it doesn't matter. It's yours.
Yes,
like,
I did have that. I opened the book and I was like, "This isn't mine. Should I? Shouldn't I?" I was like, "I'm going to get 100 times more value out of this book if I just write on it." So I was like, "Shut up and write on it."
And Ali can afford a new one, right? So if he really wants one, like that guy can afford
he can buy
it, right?
One. Yeah,
he can buy another
exactly, exactly. Coming back to permissions,
yes,
such a good point. And I don't think I always realize that this is a thing, that I just need permission. And it's something so simple, but it makes all the difference. So a few weeks ago, I had a similar conversation with Ali where we just kind of sat down and we went, like, let's actually define this role, because since I've started, there has been zero definition of the role. So we're like, we'll kind of just see how it goes. And until that point, I was doing, I guess, like the urgent, non-important stuff, because it was just like that whole, you feel busy, you've like done everything all day, but actually what have you really accomplished? It's like, oh yeah, maybe not that much. So we kind of had this like really helpful, like clarity conversation around priorities, like as in his priorities, like what he wants to focus on, which we'll come back to the videographer stuff. And just like, almost the boundaries of the role. It's not like I need to be told step by step what to do. Yeah. Like, obviously, if someone wants to tell me that, like, fine. But like, I don't need. But I need like parameters. And if the parameters are like this wide, fine. And if they're like this narrow, fine. But I think I just need that. So if it's like actually you have full control over X, that is still a parameter. Versus actually we're not sure what's kind of going on here. So just to have that kind of better understanding of like the calendar, I think we came to the agreement that there was no way I was going to have full control over the calendar, because Ali will always just put stuff in as he remembers and as somebody asks him. And actually, that's absolutely fine. I don't think I need to, because he lives by his calendar and he needs to be able to, if it's 2 a.m. in the morning,
he can do what he likes at this time, right?
Okay. Basically, like if he wants to put something in at 2 a.m. in his calendar, I'm obviously not online. So that's fine. So I guess the point is we are clear that, hey, look, we're both going to be attacking the calendar, and that's broadly fine. It was just clarity. It's like you basically have most of the control, but I will plug and play as I need to. And I'm like, that's absolutely fine. Like that's clear. Emails, messages, what are the important stuff? How do I want you to approach these? It's almost like this inbox just needs like less time on it, and here are the important things that you need to look out for, and this inbox is absolute priority. Keep on top of this. It's simple things, but it just gives you the parameters and the permission to kind of do that. And it's the same of like, I'm happy for you to do X, you have full control, and I'm like, cool, now I don't feel like I need to tiptoe around this, I can step in. So yeah, just want to, like, in my head I left that going, I am so clear. So clarity one, but you're right, actually, I hadn't really thought about it. It's permission. It's like, here is your permission to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, cool, that's all I needed.
And I think this is such a good point for people who are creators who perhaps are hiring for the first time or starting to work with people, is like being really clear about what's in people's remit and what's not, and overly, especially when you're first working with someone. So they'll get to a stage, hopefully, where it becomes relatively intuitive between the two of you and you can symbiotically kind of get everything done, or especially bigger teams. But actually, I think at the beginning, going, especially with new hires, like really back to basic SOPs, making sure that you've got brand guidelines, you've got voice guidelines, like how would Ali respond to that email, right? Okay, what are the types of things that he would say? Like, so you can make it as natural as possible for the both of you. And I think that probably sometimes, especially when we're first hiring, we're so excited that we've made a hire and we're like, yes, I can just offload all of that stuff onto them, rather than thinking, okay, I need to give stuff bit by bit, so that I'm happy that they're doing it in the way that I would want it to be done, and that they're also not overwhelmed. And then you have those really clear conversations about boundaries, permission, all of those types of things. So I think, especially if you're a creator and you're like just starting that hiring journey, it's so difficult, but invested that time up front with like a new hire is so helpful further down the line. The ones that I see break down are people who aren't onboarded properly, and then it never quite works, and there's always a bit of a grey area, and 4 months in you'll be like, oh, well, I just thought you knew that, or they'd be like, oh, I've just been doing it this way. And it's like, you really kind of have to almost walk someone through your kind of thought processes and write it down, so that they can just constantly refer back to it. Otherwise it's just, kind of doesn't work.
It's so true, because everyone is different as well. So somebody else might say, I don't touch my calendar, for example, or I need to know every single message that ever comes through, like both extremes, but everybody has their own way of working. And it's like, well, all I need is like a little bit from you to say this is broadly how it works. So for Ali, basically we got to the conclusion of anything relating to the calendar takes up mental space in his mind. And obviously the whole point of me is to reduce that mental space in his mind, so he's got more time to do the filming and the important stuff. And that hadn't been like that hadn't been voiced. It's like, yeah, you live by a calendar, cool. But at no point did I know how much mental space it took if stuff on the calendar is like up in the air or whatever. So just having that conversation to go, the calendar is almost like so important. So even like planning till the end of the year is actually top of mind, even though there's more important in quote marks stuff going on today. That was an unlock. So permission / clarity.
And that's a really good example, isn't it, about how people have different kind of levels of what's the word I want? Like importance that they place on stuff. So like for some other people, calendar not important at all, but for Ali that's a real mental drain. And actually, even though it will take you the same amount of time whether or not it's important to someone or not, actually the impact you have working for him, being able to manage that effectively, that really levels up your job and levels up your importance. And I think, again, sometimes when we're hiring, we don't always have that conversation about, like, these are the absolute must-dos. And it may well be calendar is absolute king for me, but messages can wait 3 days. I'm not bothered if they don't get replied to. But you'll have other people who have a different view on that. So again, it's kind of, I guess, not making any assumptions on either side and being really clear about what are the key deliverables. I've always said my job is to make my boss's job easier, but you need to understand what that looks like for that person.
Yes, completely. That.
Write that down.
Write that, quote. Okay, we left a lot of other pins. Which other pins should we go to?
So I guess struggles in the week. What else sort of came up this week?
So I have a new routine based on the 2-hour workday. No, hang on. I don't mean I'm only working 2 hours a day.
That would be
based on this,
delightful, wouldn't it? Right? I've now got 10 hours of leisure a day. Like, fantastic.
Yay me! No. Okay, now I know how to start my day effectively. It's like, cool, this is amazing. I know exactly what the first 2 days look like. The first 2 hours. And I've stepped back a little bit and built my own little personal thing off the back of that. So, side note, wanted to get back into journaling, wanted to get back into reading. None of those were happening recently. I say back into journaling. I never really journaled. I want to make journaling a habit and I want to get back into reading. So I was like, okay, cool. Taking this 10 minutes approach thing. I know exactly what triggered it. Okay. Have you heard of 75 Hard?
Yes, I have. Yes.
Okay. So, obviously went down a little bit of a 75 Hard rabbit hole on YouTube relatively recently for the second time. First time I was like, nah. In all honesty, second time I was also like, nah. So for anyone who doesn't know, I can't remember the exact parameters, but basically this is a challenge for 75 days where you do things like, it's like very specific. It's something along the lines of like, you have to get up before 8 a.m. every single day. You have to read 10 pages of nonfiction. You have to exercise like 45 minutes in the morning and it has to be outdoors, 45 minutes in the evening. And it has, I can't, there's a bunch of these things. And if you miss a day, your thing resets. So you start again from day one, basically. So it's hard, I guess, is my point. Oh, and you have to stick to a diet as well, but it can be any diet. So I was like, I like the idea. The idea of just like, just 10 minutes a day is progress or like just 10 pages of whatever. But I was like, there's no way I'm sticking to this. A, because I don't want to, and B, it's just excessive, in my opinion, personally. So I came up with 75 Easy.
Nice.
This is my version. I have 4 things that I need to stick to. One is I must get 30 minutes of exercise in a day. Now, that doesn't mean it has to be a workout. That doesn't mean it has to be outdoors. It doesn't have to be a planned thing. If I end up walking for 30 minutes a day because I'm walking somewhere, that counts. So basically, I need to tick off my Apple Watch ring of 30 minutes of exercise. So relatively easy because I want to be able to do this 7 days a week. I don't want there to be an excuse of, oh, like I trained super hard. So everyone should be able to go for a walk or something. Yeah. She says, having not gone for one this morning. But so
still early,
that is,
we've still got time.
It's, yeah, we'll make it happen. The second one is what I found in the office is I'm way less likely to drink water because I just get distracted or whatever. So the second one, it's a small goal, but just to drink 1.5 litres of water a day, which is effectively 2.5 of my 600 ml bottles. So I'm normally, no, actually, there could be days where I have like half a bottle. I'm bad if I don't make a conscious effort. So 1,500 mils of water. And then the last two are journal every day. So that literally could just be a photo and a line. There just has to be an entry in day one, which is the app I'm using. And the fourth one is to read non-fiction. I can't remember if I said for 10 minutes or 15 minutes a day, but like neither here nor there. So they are my 4, basically. And they should be very, very, very straightforward. Hence 75, easy. I also caveated it with, it doesn't have to be every single day. Let's go for 80% because otherwise I will just stop the whole thing. So 80% is good enough. And for anybody who gives a crap, I'm tracking it with Streaks, which is an iOS app, which is also on my Apple Watch, which just makes life a little better. If anyone's on YouTube, you still can't see it. Anyway, so, which is great because like exercise is automatically tracked. I have a water tracker as well. So anyway, beside the point, where did I start this? So coming back to the original point, which was something around reading routine. Okay, so I've gone, want to do 75, easy. I know what my first 2 hours of the day look like for work. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, because I know how important the mornings are to me, is I'm going to get up. The first thing I'm going to do is my 10, 15 minutes of journaling. That entry is going in first. Then I'm going to do my 10, 15 minutes of nonfiction reading. Tick. That technically also counts towards work because it's leveling up and it's stuff related to work that I'm reading anyways. And if for anyone who's interested, I'm currently reading The CEO's Secret Weapon, which is actually really good. And I think it's by Jan Jones, who is Tony Robbins' ex-EA, I think.
Okay,
cool. Oh, hello. I'll link that below for anyone who's interested in the EA stuff. Another pin, possibly for a later episode, is the whole EA versus business partner, which I really resonate with. So that's one for maybe a future conversation. And then I do my basically 2 hours of Ali, whatever that is. So the morning routine is kind of working, like 6 days in only, but like it's the boxes have been ticked. However, that gets me to between 11 and 12, depending on what time I started work that day. And then I get a little tired because it's me and it's pre-lunch. So I'm like, I'm hungry. Or if it's 12, I'm like, cool, it's lunch. I'm going to go eat.
It's 12:01, it's time for lunch.
It's 12. Why am I not eating already? So my problem is then coming back from lunch and then being like, cool, I need to get back into work because my mornings are where I do my best work. And therefore to come back and to dip into stuff, I am struggling with. I'm not struggling to get back into stuff. Like I can do the easy stuff, but I will then end up doing the easy stuff. So I was supposed to build an accelerator CRM this week and I kind of forgot about it for the first couple of days, but then I was like, okay. And it ended up being Friday before I actually started it. Did it like mostly like all fine. But basically my struggle is the afternoons then, because my afternoons is generally the dip. It's like post lunch, it's the mid-afternoon, and it's just like, and then before you know, it's like 6:30, 7. You're like, okay, I think I'm done for the day. And then you end up doing like half an hour before bed because it's like, I never got around to like clearing all the emails or whatever. So, any thoughts? That was the biggest ramble ever.
Yeah, it was like a lot of pins, a lot of thoughts. So I think firstly, 75 hard, I think is a really. So I agree, probably not for you, but for lots of people, because it's more of a mental challenge, but it's an all or nothing. And I think the problem is you have to be the kind of person, a type A personality or whatever, who really resonates with the kind of perfection or nothing type problem. And I think the problem is for most people, you miss a day and then the idea that you reset and have to go back. For me, that would just be like the rest of my life now I'm on 75 hard because like I'm just always going to be something which I expect. And a lot of it's like, you said like it's 2 workouts, which is not too bad, but then it's like, but it's 2 gallons of water. It's a progress pick. It's like, there's quite a lot in that. I think you have to make that your prime focus. But I think the idea of routine is really interesting when you're a creator because part of probably what attracts you to being a creator is there's no routine, like, and you can do what you want when you want and whatever. And it's this kind of, I guess, particularly like you who's come from a corporate world, like the transition from, we have very clear work days and we have very clear start and finish and lunch hours and all of that type of thing. And even if you have never worked in a corporate environment, school has probably taught you some sort of structure similar to that, like, which is like between these hours we work, you have playtime, you have lunchtime, and you have whatever. So I think a lot of us struggle with getting out of that. And that whole structure of school and university and whatever, it was set up at a time when it was teaching people to work in factories or to be good workers, where they were going to be physically present for a period of time. So that's like basically where it comes from, which in this day and age now is like a bit of an anachronistic kind of approach. So I think, again, a lot of us sleepwalk into kind of routine. So I think, great, you've got the morning stuff, that's fantastic. But actually, how many of us structure our work day around our strengths and weaknesses? So you know that the morning's really good for you. Fantastic. It is for a lot of people. But I'd say I would be looking, you genuinely could take a longer break in the day if you wanted to, particularly when you're working from home and stuff. So actually, why do we force ourselves to come back after we've eaten straight away? And what, so if you like read like or listen to Huberman and stuff, like he has a nap, he like does some other stuff, and it's like, actually you need to kind of work out what's best for you, especially with creators and stuff, because it's like, it's not a linear, I put in this amount of time and this is the output I get. Actually, like you said, 1 hour of focused work is worth 4 or 5 hours of just sitting in front of your desk. And I think one of the things I noticed when my husband like moved to doing more full-time creating is actually some days he wouldn't leave the house because there was no need to leave the house. And it sounds stupid, but then like 3 or 4 days, especially in the winter, like 3 or 4 days in, like it's not good. Like you need to kind of make yourself have some sort of healthy framework around it, because it can be really easy just to be either consuming content all the time or just making content, and there's no real life in there. So I think that was kind of it. So I've heard of 75 soft, which is kind of, I guess, your version of 75 easy, where it's like, it's like one workout, like 5 days a week, and it's not quite as intense. So I think there is like a nice mid frame. So I would say if you're struggling with the afternoons, have a look at actually what that post-lunch looks like, because actually is eating and then coming back to work straight away and expecting yourself to be straight into it very sensible as an approach? Because actually I'd say probably lean into where your strengths are. And I find that sometimes doing I do a lot of like, and my boss is going to kill me if they listen to this, but like if I'm at home I might take a bit of a longer lunch break and do my housework, for instance, because it's kind of like active but not too active. It doesn't require a lot of brain power, but like I'm moving. And I always find if your brain's foggy, doing something physical helps to kind of unblock it. And then actually you might go for a walk, have an idea, kind of whatever. But you at least come back kind of, the blood's pumping in a bit energized. So I think in those days you can't get out for a walk. Is there something else you can be doing that's kind of productive, but not necessarily, kind of mentally productive? Or is it a nap, or is it whatever? And then what am I stacking in my afternoons? Now, of course, when most of us work for other people, you're not completely able to control your diary. And especially when you're working various time zones, as you will be soon, like there will be some time when the afternoon actually becomes your morning almost, because that's when stuff kind of switches on. But I think trying to load your diary to do the things. So I'd say, 1 or 2 hours of productive work is always better than 4 hours of procrastination and faffing about on email. And we can always say 8 hours a day, that's like not an issue, is it? But it's like what you were actually doing with that time. So I think being honest with yourself, I always have a check-in with myself. If I'm like in one of those moods where I'm like, I'm not really getting anything done, I'm like, I'm just going to stop, because I'm much better to smash this out in half an hour later than I am sat here for 2 hours just faffing about the edges. I mean, I love a faff, but like faffing around the edges isn't really kind of thing. So I think, perhaps stopping sometimes. And we've talked about this before, but also you're not going to have the same energy levels throughout the week. Monday and Tuesday is going to have different energy to Thursday, Friday. So actually, again, looking at what we're putting in what days, the idea that I would do very structured deep work on a Friday afternoon is ridiculous, because by that point, me who works very corporate 9 to 5, Friday afternoons are not. But that is my time to like tidy up, to sort my diary for next week, to follow up with people, to kind of make sure my inbox is clear. Like that's a productive use of a Friday afternoon for me. If you ask me to write a very detailed analytical report, it's probably not going to happen. So does that help at all? I feel like that was an equally long ramble to your ramble, but I feel like we're just in top trumps now of rambles.
Let's do it. Right, the challenge is laid down. No, I think, yes, but of course it makes sense. Like it makes a ton of sense. I was just going to say that I think I'm the opposite to you on the like whole Friday, Monday thing. In that I find that the end of the week is so good for me for deep work, because naturally I think people are worn out and like the meetings are over, and I'm like, cool, I got 2 days when no one's around, and I ended up like yesterday was my best day for deep work. I think like because I have no life, so it's not like I have anywhere to be. And I'm like, great, Friday, people. And I think even going back to like corporate, like no one used to come in on a Friday, basically. Yeah, exactly. It was the quietest day in the office. And I was like, great, I can get some stuff done. Whereas Monday morning, I actually really need to warm up. And I'm like, this is when I'm going to plan the week, because like my planning brain is switched off by the end of like on a Friday, I can't plan for the next week at all. Yeah. My brain is like, no. You can do some deep work where you don't have to, it's going to sound stupid, where you don't have to think. It's like, it's a different kind of thinking. And like my deep work. You don't have so many
tabs open, do you? Like if it's deep work, it's one, is that focusing, isn't it? And I think that's really interesting, because a lot of people post-pandemic obviously are doing the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday thing, like out and about in offices or whatever. I really like Monday, Friday in the office, probably for a similar reason to you though. It's a bit quieter, but then also you just get more done. And so Fridays now are a really quiet work day. And so as you say, that's when you can. Friday morning for me, I can do deep work. Friday afternoon, not so much. So I think you just have to shape it around your week, don't you?
Yeah. I also I am so lazy. So I won't always come back after lunch when I'm at home. So I don't have that problem. My problem is like, actually, I need a bit of just like sharp and get on with it sometimes. But
so either accountability. So either then, if that was me, I would either plug in like a meeting or a call or something that I have to be back for and present. Yeah. Or I'd schedule something I really like doing.
So this was the thought I had of like, I understand the 2 hours a day. Like these are the most important things. My thought was, but what happens if that, because that 1 hour like leveling up is such like a chill hour, in theory that could be a post lunch hour, because that's so like cool, just go and read or like watch a thing or like take some notes. It doesn't require a lot of mental energy, whereas I'm wondering if I'm wasting that hour in the morning, because that hour I could have just got something done and got it out the way. And it's there then, not still on my mind for the rest of the day, because it's like, it's done and dusted. And B, I have way more energy to just smash it out, rather than coming back in the afternoon going, oh, I've got that thing to do. Cool, I'm not really in the mood, I'll do it later. And then it's like 9:30, I'm like, shit, I really need to do the thing. Let me just do the thing. So that was my thought process. But the flip side of that is that I know I've done that hour every day this week. Would that then get dropped if I move it? So that's kind of what I'm weighing up in my mind. Yeah.
So I think try it. Like, there's no harm in trying it for another week. And I think it sounds like, it does sound like that would be a really good post-lunch, because you're going to enjoy it and it's going to be interesting, and that kind of it puts you into single focus again, doesn't it? So yeah, absolutely. And you might actually benefit more knowing that those other things have been ticked off the list, and you can actually really lean into it, rather than being like, I've only got an hour, I need to get this done, and then I need to move on to everything else. So I just play around.
Okay, it's happening. Although annoyingly, next week is podcast filming week, which I guess brings us on to another point. So again, I'm not actually involved in the podcast, so I don't really need to be around, but I end up being around and helping. And the way we have podcast filming week is that we have like a 10 a.m. slot and a 2 p.m. slot, and they're 2 hours each. So obviously, like, it's all recorded in person. Somebody comes in, we record the pod. So there's a little bit of prep that happens before, whether I'm helping with like the SD cards or the podcast room, or just like saying hi to the guest or whatever. And then afterwards, it's the social media stuff. Like if I can help, take whatever, get some B-roll, get some A-roll. Again, we need to come back to the videographer stuff, because that changes things slightly. So what that means is, for my ADHD brain, is that it's stop-start. So even though for the 2 hours that they are recording, I am not doing anything, it's those constant interruptions of like, cool, I'll get in, I'll be there for like half an hour. So I'm like, oh, I can't really start anything, because like in half an hour, someone's going to rock up. Then it's like, cool, I know they're going to be done in 2 hours, so let's just blitz through other things. And then you've got the added thing that people will be around. And then it's like, oh, now it's a break to do the post stuff. Oh, now it's lunch. Like, let's order lunch, and not going to get any work done before like in that 15 minutes of lunch. And then it's like the post lunch thing, and then the next guest is turning up. And basically, that's how the last week went. And it's like, oh, SD cards and like transferring stuff. And obviously you can work while you are transferring stuff, but mentally my attention is then split. And I think we've talked about this before of like, if I just had, this involves more planning from me, but if I had here are the tasks that I could do, the quick wins, right? Of like, okay, something's uploading, I don't need to do much attention, go and like put that thing on the calendar or whatever. But I guess my point of that is like every week is different. Like no 2 weeks are the same. So yes, I was at home this week and the routine is just so much easier to keep to because there's no interruptions, no distractions. In the office, yeah, we'll have a podcast filming week. We'll have a YouTube filming week. We'll have, it's very rare that we have a standard week. Although that might just be recency bias, but like then we have a sprint every like 5 weeks or.
Yeah, you don't have much consistency. Do you? Like there's consistency that every week is different, but that's the kind of
basically.
Yeah.
And I know that obviously that is on me to figure out. So I guess, yeah, what I'm thinking is all of a sudden that first 2 hours of the day is going to be interrupted next week. So I think we should sidestep into the videographer stuff really quickly because I think that impacts this. And we've mentioned it, like I've mentioned it 4 times and I'm not given any explanation. So a little bit of preamble on the videographer stuff. So Ali has decided to bring back the vlog on the second channel. We made this decision a few weeks ago. I think it'd be really cool, like so behind the kind of bringing back of the vlog. It is going to be weekly rather than daily, which is what we had when Gordon was doing it. And as much as it was amazing, it was like insane to have a daily vlog. So it's going to be weekly. And then it was like, Bhav, you basically are going to be with me 5 days a week already in the office. It kind of makes sense if you are the one also doing the filming, i.e. you effectively are de facto videographer. I'm like, cool. Well, actually super cool, but I'm like, now I'm thinking how much of this like affects my day, how much time it takes. So again, ask the question. And Ali was like, Ali, heads up, will always under egg, I will over egg. So somewhere in the middle is about right. It's like, I will only really take like 10, 15 minutes of your day. Obviously that's not true, but it also probably isn't taking up the 4 hours a day that was like in my mind. So the idea being that I spend some time planning the vlog the week before, and then do like a 10-minute check, and then in the morning to say like this is what we need for the vlog, and then make sure throughout the day I'm getting that footage. So it's just like a mental thing to know that podcast guest has arrived. I need to, instead of just randomly getting B-roll for like social media, I need to think vlog. How does this fit into the vlog? And then at the end of the day, all the footage to kind of dump and stuff, and then making sure the editor knows what they're doing to actually edit the vlog. Thankfully, I don't have to deal with it once it's basically recorded. My point for the sidestep was, next week, I'm now also going to be thinking I need to capture both A-roll and B-roll through the week. So I need to have planned the vlog, which I've mostly done. I just need to tweak it so that I get footage from Ali at various points, asking the right questions, and then get all the like guest footage. Are we doing like any extra stuff? So that, I guess, is also on my mind. So my routine of my first 2 hours of the day is basically non-existent, I think, unless I start work before 8 a.m. Yeah, that's not going to happen. Well, it could happen.
I think let's not say that's going to happen. Yeah.
That's not going to happen. It could, but it should.
Yeah. So I think lots of things. So I think you've already said that basically that power hour doesn't happen into first thing. So I would move that elsewhere in the day and all week. Cool. In terms of, so I think this is one of the things that we always do is we overestimate how much we can get done in a day and underestimate how much we can get done in a week or a month. And a lot of your stuff doesn't have to be done on a daily basis. It's like as long as it gets done by the next sprint or the next kind of whatever milestone is, like that's okay. So I think I would be planning my months a bit like, okay, that's going to be a podcast week. That means that realistically I'm only going to get to do 2 power hours in that whole week because I'm going to be out and about doing other stuff. And I think the videography thing, you're right. I don't believe it's going to take 15 minutes a day. I think it is probably 1 to 2 hours a day in terms of setting it up, doing it, uploading it, getting it to wherever it needs to get to. So I think if I was doing your job, I'd be thinking, right, the weeks where I'm doing that type of stuff, it's videography and it's like that first hour. And if that's all I get done, like that's a good job. And I think there's a kind of constant battle between, I guess, need for routine versus like every day and week is different for you guys and will continue to be so. So I would, those podcasts, because part of your role is to make that podcast day smoother. Like it is to make sure lunch is there and it is to make sure that everything's charged and everyone's got what they need and the guests are okay. And like that is part of your role. So I think focusing on those things and then, as you say, not assuming you can get anything else done and then keeping that list of, okay, actually it's half an hour, they're deep in filming, I could bash out 3 emails or I could book a flight or I could do whatever else I've got to do on my list. So I would just be keeping that running to-do list, which I do in my job. Like, okay, I've got half an hour, I've got an unexpected, the meeting's been cancelled, I've got an unexpected half an hour. Like, okay, what can I cross off my to-do list? Rather than just reacting all the time to someone else's priorities.
Yeah. Next week's going to be fun.
And the videography thing is going to take you longer at the beginning as well. So just think like, actually, the first few weeks is going to be at least 2 hours. I might get it down to an hour. And also, it might change after the sprint anyway. Either we decide the vlog's not going to happen so much, or someone else is going to do it, and there will come times where you are physically not in the same place. So actually, vlog filming becomes less of a priority for you because you're just not physically there. So I think don't worry about getting a perfect system at this point. Just worry about, okay, what's manageable? What's a realistic thing for me to do in a day or a week? And therefore, let's just make that happen.
Yeah, it is actually like it's super interesting. I think I did this earlier this week of when you realize how much actual work time you have in a week. It's like you kind of take the week, you take all the meetings out, you take like the BAU that you need to do, i.e. just like clearing emails, or like I think we were talking about this in sprint week of like the micro tasks that you have to do for the business. Like we have to update on our quests every week. We have to I don't, but like team slides ready, although I actually think I probably should start that again, but slides for the team meeting and like all these little things that come up in a week that also take up like their micro tasks, and they might take 5-10 minutes each, but actually by the end of the week they could have taken 2 hours of your time. That on top of meetings, on top of like having a break and having lunch, and you're like, oh, I'm actually not left with a lot of time to actually do any work. And it is actually really interesting. So I started time tracking properly at the beginning of this week, and obviously I've forgotten to do bits of it, but broadly it's kind of in there, and it's quite interesting. So I will keep that up because I think that would be quite insightful. But yeah, I think planning is the key, is what I've realized.
And I think you bring up a good point about working with creators though, because like, so say one of your tasks was create a thumbnail. For some people that's a 10-minute job, and for other people that's a 2-hour job. And sometimes when we're delegating or looking at people's workloads, we're like, oh, well, you could do that. And maybe you personally could do that in 10 minutes, but actually for other people that is a 2-hour job. And so I think we have to be realistic about, just because we think it's not going to take very long, actually something, and vice versa. I've done it. I mean, we've talked about this before, haven't we? Like we've put off tasks for months, which actually ended up taking 10 minutes. You're like, if I'd known that it was just going to take 10 minutes, I would have done this like way. But sometimes we build stuff up in our head. And again, the perfectionism thing can kick on in terms of like, I want to have a clear block where I can really do this properly. And that never materializes. And then actually when you do it, you're like, oh, okay. It turns out that was not needed.
Yes, it is so true. I think that comes like that whole like a 10-minute thing versus a 2-hour thing. Like, I guess if I like put my Ali hat on, which I do every so often, I guess there's like a setting of expectations as well, because Ali does this a lot. He's like that, and again, he under eggs, but he's like, that is genuinely a 10-minute task. You're like, no, it isn't. And he's like, all you have to do is X, Y, and Z. And you're like, oh, that's all you wanted. You didn't actually want A to Z. It's like, yeah, like, and it's just that extra clarity on what the actual expectation is. So it might still not be a 10-minute job. It might be a 25-minute job, but it's not the 2-hour job that you thought it was.
Exactly.
Because it's like, oh, all you meant was this, and this. That is, okay, cool. I can do that. And I think to kind of combat this, we started doing this definition of done, nice. Which is a concept, I think, from Dan Martell in Buy Back Your Time, which is actually a really good book. I read again this week. And the idea is, the definition of done is basically it's the definition of, if I'm asking you to go and create a thumbnail, it's like what I actually expect and like what the outcome is. And the way he says it is you've got to look at facts, feelings, and functionality. And sometimes this is overkill of like, can you just book me a restaurant? It's like, yeah, cool. Like I don't need a facts, feelings, and functionality for this. Yeah. But it is, so for example, thumbnail, fact is like this task is done when a thumbnail has been created. Like it even could be as simple as that. The feelings are, it could be as much as when I look at this thumbnail, I think, oh my God, this is the best thumbnail in the world. In which case, okay, maybe this is an 8-hour job versus actually all I want in this. So for the vlog for week 1, Ali was basically like, the thumbnail just needs to be 3 pictures of me from the week. I'm like, cool. That actually genuinely is a 15-minute job then. So like the facts are, this is a 10-minute. And sometimes I do ask Ali for like, how long do you want me to take on this? Because it really clarifies the expectation of, is it a 2-hour job? Is it a 2-minute job? And it's like, this is absolutely a 10-minute thing. I want 3 pictures, like whatever, super simple. That's basically all I want for the thing. When I look at this, I'm like, cool, yeah, that's a vlog. Versus, oh my God, I need this to be Mr. Beast, or like, not that we ever do Mr. Beast, but you know, like this needs to be the best like thumbnail ever created. It was a poor example for facts, feelings and functionality. But that kind of like thing. But like the shorter version would just be, this task is done when the restaurant is booked between 7 and 9 p.m. on this date. And you've put it in my calendar and let me know.
Yeah.
Cool. Like,
as opposed to, but I want a table here, and actually I'm going to propose, so I'd like some flowers, and I'd like a ring, and I'd like this, yes. Like, yeah, there are very different scenarios, aren't they? Yeah, no, I fully agree. Yeah. I think that is a really good definition. I think the other thing as well is, I'm always like, do the 15-minute job, and then if it's not good enough, you've already you've broken the back of it. Whereas, so it depends on how you work with a person, because for some people, so I have worked for bosses in the past who would be very frustrated if I continually bought them, in their view, half-done jobs. But for other bosses, it was like, that's great. And then, like you say, you have that sense check of, actually, that's already met their expectations. So although I thought all these extra things I could do on that presentation, it's not actually necessary, so just do the thing.
The 80-20. Ali is a big fan of this, and actually I'm just resetting how I work, and I'm actually really glad, because I'm obviously very bad at like, it needs to be 100% or nothing, and it never is. But this whole 80-20 of like, cool, like you wanted me to build a PA course. Actually, what I've done is I've outlined it, thoughts, and like the benefit of that is you get feedback there and then. So you haven't, which has happened in the past in the team, of like, it's like someone goes away and builds an entire course, and Ali was like, wasn't quite what I wanted. Exactly. Whereas like if those check-ins happen like early on, like getting Ali involved at the very beginning and the very end is like super important, and then just like check-ins to make sure you're on the right line. But yeah, Ali is a huge fan of just like 80% is like spending 15 minutes, for example. Okay, so if I was booking something,
can I just say, so glad he's not a doctor anymore, because I do want to accept for my doctors, but carry on,
I assume this is purely entrepreneurial rules. Oh, God. Let's not get Ali cancelled. That would not be good. Yeah, so, like, it could be planning a holiday, for example. Like, instead of going away and planning the entire thing and being like, and spending 2 weeks on it and being like, ticked every box, is all sorted. It's like, cool. I spent 30 minutes or 15 minutes. Here are some options. Here are some super, like, these are some travel dates. These are some travel times, flight hours, like rough cost. Like that could be a 20-minute job. And at that point, it could be like, oh yeah, I don't care. Or as in like, I don't care where we go. No, I don't care that you've done any work. Like it could like fine with any of them. Or actually, I didn't realize that. Can we change it up completely and let's do this? And you haven't gone and like planned the whole thing. And it's like
wasted all your time. Yeah.
Basically. And it also, I think it's helpful for me because it means I'm not putting big things off. Yeah. Because in my mind, planning a holiday is like a big thing. Whereas actually it's like, if you just want to spend 15 minutes, like all you need to know. And then the decision is made. And once the decision is made, it's like so easy for me to go and execute. So yeah, I think that's a mindset shift that I'm like, doing myself, because when I see something as a project, I'm like, shit, that's a big thing. And actually it's not. It's cool. Let's just spend 5 minutes like looking at what needs to be done. That's it. And once the first step is made, then you're like, cool, I just need to execute. Well, I can do that.
Yeah, that I can do. And like one exercise I love doing with teams is getting them, so you get a team of people together, and I've done this with you guys, but like, and then say, write me about a snowman. And that's a very clear instruction. However, everyone interprets it differently. Some people will tell you a lovely story about little Johnny who built the snowman. Other people will like write a very factual list about it's cold, it's made of ice, it only happens in winter, like and that's the point, isn't it? When you're working for a creator, and like brains can work differently, and what you think they've asked for and actually what they think they've asked for can be quite different. So I think everything you're talking about in terms of like clarifying expectations up front, checking in, doing like regular milestones, course correcting, and it doesn't always have to be like the absolute bells and whistles thing that we think it does. And it's hard with people like Ali because they have high expectations, don't they? Which is right, like absolutely should have, and you don't get to be successful without that. However, that doesn't mean that applies unilaterally for every single element on every single project across the business. And like the thumbnail thing's a really good example, isn't it? Because you're not Mr. Beast, and so therefore actually it just needs to almost be like a placeholder, doesn't it? It just needs to do the job, as opposed to like, this is going to be revered as the best thumbnail that was ever created and will be referred to in marketing courses as like done is better than perfect in my book. And I think sometimes you just need to get it done. Then, as I say, you can always incrementally improve it depending on actually if someone else wants a little bit more. But I think your point really about setting expectations up front just saves everyone so much time and effort in terms of not getting stuff done or putting stuff off because we think it's bigger than it is.
Yep. I do it all the time. All the time.
It's funny you mentioned about travel because, like, with my husband, it's like this running joke. So about 10 years ago, I booked him this like surprise trip to Barcelona for his birthday, and then I realised it was just like every other freaking holiday we've ever been on because he never knows where we're going, he never knows where we're staying, he never knows what was happening with the dog, which airport we were going to, how we were getting there. And I was like, in my head, it became this like magical like surprise trip, and it was like literally every other holiday for him because he had no like idea what's going on. So I think sometimes as well, we like build it up, don't we? Like, oh my god, like I've done this thing, and it's like it's literally every other holiday.
But I would have done it if. Oh my god, I don't know how to feel about this. I have so many feelings off the back of this. Like, I'm just feeling sorry for you because
don't feel sorry for me because I'm a control freak. So like, I like the planning. Like, I'm good. Like, I'm good with that. But yeah, I often joke my husband doesn't need a wife; he just needs a PA. But and we're kind of like bearing that out in this conversation, aren't we? Like, he just needs to really Bhav. So but, if I die early, I'll leave him to you in my house and just I will. Bhav, I bequeath you, Baz. You have to look after him.
I will look after him for you and make sure he has holidays booked.
Yeah, exactly. He knows where he's going.
That's so funny. I relate to you on the control thing. I think with me though, like I just like to know that they care. That's enough.
Yeah.
Like I'm happy. You're right. I do want the control. Although every so often it is nice to not have to think about it. Like the last holiday I went on, I didn't have to think about it at all, and I was like, oh my god, this is a thing.
What is
this is
like?
amazing. Yeah. More of this, please. But yeah, that's quite funny.
Yeah, so we're on holiday. So like we're going on a cruise next year for my dad's 75th birthday, and it's the first holiday that I've not booked myself in 25 years or whatever. And part of me is equally terrified and delighted in equal measure because I'm like, I have no control over this holiday. So they've booked the cabins, for instance. Now, usually I would spend an 8-hour process, like identifying the very best cabin for our specific requirements and like where on the ship it's going to be and blah, blah, blah. Like my dad's booked that. So I'm also a little bit scared they've booked the cabin next door to us. So I'm like, oh, we don't necessarily need to do that, do we? But anyway, that's a different story. But yeah, I'm like, but I'm like all the activities. I'm like, and they've booked dinner because we're going with like the whole family. So there's like kids and so they've booked dinner for 6:00 in the evening. I'm like, I feel a little bit unhappy about booking dinner like 9 months in advance. Secondly, 6:00 for me is like, that's not the time you should be eating. So me and my husband are like, oh, can we get a second dinner? Do you think? Do you think we can do that with the kids and then go and actually have a proper dinner? Like, but yeah, it's that relinquishing of control when you've been in control for so long. It's like, so who knows? I might like it, but I don't think I will. But we'll see.
That's fair.
Yeah,
I was going to say, if it gives you any like glimmer of hope, I did like it last time, but then I realised it wasn't a usual holiday. It was one of those all-inclusive, so there wasn't actually like
anything to do.
And it was a place we'd been to before, so like that wasn't actually, it literally was just a booking of, whereas I think if it was like a city break or something, and I was like, I'd probably spend that time going, are we going here? Are we going here? Like I'd still end up doing all the stuff, and it would have been like, you might as well have just done it. So I can relate. Yeah, it is easier to just do it.
Which is probably why we do the jobs we do, because,
Very much so.
I think, and like this always comes back to it, isn't it? But like most creators have people behind them. Most big creators have some sort of people behind them, because actually doing everything and being good at everything is not, and Ali's obviously transitioning to be more of that on-air talent, isn't he now? Like moving away from kind of like so much of the mechanics of everything and then just really focusing and leaning into what he's good at. And I think for those creators listening, it's like that, it can be really helpful to have someone else behind the scenes who is the grown-up and just is like, right, okay, this is where you need to be, this is what you're doing, this is what you need to take with you, blah, blah. I booked this, and I mean, God, that's the dream, right? Yeah. Not for you and I, because we're control freaks and we'll be like, yes, but did you check I want seat 27E and but all of those other things. If you're not that kind of person, this is the dream, right?
Yeah. But that kind of like last point is that is... Obviously, I want to like learn to think more like him, because like the way he thinks is like amazing. Well, yes, I'm not like, not completely like it, but like the way he thinks about the whole 80-20 stuff and like the just like let's just go and break things and like it'll work out. Like that kind of mindset is like really good, and the way he approaches things. But then I'm like, there is obviously a reason that like I hope we work well together, and that I do the things that he's not good at, and therefore like I'm never, and nor do I actually even want to be Ali, do I want to be exactly like him, but there does need to be like a slight difference in the skill set, obviously, because if I was like him, I wouldn't be working for him. I'd have my own thing somewhere else. What was my point of that? I had a point when I started that.
So I think I'll speak and you can think about your point. But I think like for me, it's a bit like relationships, isn't it? You need a bit of yin and yang, and actually, what you need to be able to do is effective working relationships. You need to fill in each other's blind spots. So it's really comfortable when someone thinks exactly the way we do. But in business, that's not a great idea because you end up not seeing stuff or missing stuff or overdoing something. So like the person I work most closely at work, we're quite different. She's very analytical. I'm a bit more jazz handy and whatever. But actually the two of us together means that pretty much everything gets covered. Now, if it's up to her, like there'd be no socials, there'd be no, like, you know, like because it's functional, she's transactional and I'm not. Yeah. But that's what you need with good pairing. So again, if you're a creator looking to hire, it's easy to hire someone like us because of groupthink and it feels more natural. Actually, the best hire for you might be someone who has a very different skill set, but you need to find that common ground and how you kind of communicate and stuff.
Nice. Yes, agreed. I remembered my point. Thank you. It was basically that, but I guess it related to me and my thinking of like, sometimes I'd be like, why haven't I thought about that? And it's like, but like,
that's not my job.
I'm never ever going to be Ali, nor do, like I said, nor do I want to. And there is a reason like that it works in that I do have a different skill set and I do think slightly differently and I think about the things that he doesn't think about. So although they obviously like there's a massive upskill on my part in terms of like the strategic way, like the strategic thinking and that kind of stuff, which I would really want to do. Like, yeah, there are things that he's always going to think of. And instead of just feeling like, oh shit, why didn't I think of that? There is just a known, like, he has his faults, I have mine, and we kind of just, like, to your point, you kind of fill them in for each other, and actually you work well together because of that. And obviously, I do want to start thinking more like him in the strategic sense, because obviously that is what I'm here for, to kind of help and be that, like, business partnery kind of thing. But, yeah, I don't think I need to beat myself up every time there's like, oh, damn, like, I didn't have that thought process because there's a reason he's he, and I am me.
Exactly. And I think often supporting creators is about execution. So, like, the creators will always have the ideas because, as you say, that is what they do. And he's quite rare in terms of he's quite good at execution as well. And obviously, he grew his channel by himself quite well, you know. But there comes a point for most people where to level up, kind of using your guys' vernacular, you need that extra level of people. And he has hired well in terms of you are an executor and others in your team are. But as you say, it's not necessarily that you need to be the idea generation people because that's not what the business needs. You guys have got enough ideas without adding in extra people. We've got extra ideas. Like, you know, there's like it's plentiful on the ideas front. So really, it's about execution at this stage.
Yeah, nice. All right. I think we've been rambling for over an hour.
I know. Go us, all right?
Yeah, yes. Like, I think we could also carry on for another hour, but maybe we should call it. Actually, I am curious whenever these episodes go out and whoever listens as to what the ideal length is, because I always like gravitate towards the 1 hour ish, sub 1 hour podcast when I listen, because when you double speed it, it's like, cool, that's like 30 minutes, 30 minutes. I'm like, that's the hit I need when I'm going for a walk or whatever. But I know people love a longer podcast, and thoughts welcome, guys. And gals.
Yeah, and also if you want us to talk about more of Ali stuff, or like what you guys want to like
less of Ali stuff,
less of Ali stuff. Like, I mean, heaven forbid, but like it'd be really interesting, wouldn't it, to kind of work that out. Yeah,
definitely interesting. And we'll come back to various pins that we pinned and then didn't have time to get to because we're always all over the place. Well, I am anyways. Right. I'm just like, all of these things.
All of the things.
All of the things. Cool. So this episode will be up at some point. It's obviously up if you're watching. So thank you guys. We'll be back hopefully next week. This should be a weekly thing. And comments, questions, anything below if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're listening on your podcast platform of choice. Then if you're listening on Spotify, guys, I think there's a Q&A section that we will hopefully have figured out how to enable by the time this goes live. Would love to get your questions in and answer them. We kind of want to do a little segment if we can, to be honest. So that I'll stop rambling, and thank you guys.
Have a good week.
Bye.
See you later. Bye.